Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the sixth installment of the International Lecture Series of UNITAS. Before we start, please be reminded of the following guidelines. First, kindly make sure that you have registered for this lecture. The registration link can be accessed below at the comment section. For your questions, comments, and insights, please feel free to post them as comments, and these will be read during the open forum. Also, do not forget to accomplish the post-conference evaluation form, which will be posted later at the comment section. Only those who have registered and have accomplished the evaluation form are entitled to receive a certificate. This series of lectures is jointly sponsored by the Cultural, Literary, and Arts Studies Society Incorporated, or the CLAS Incorporated, Journal of Advanced Research on Literature, Culture, and Society, which was established in 1922. Is UNITAS's gift to its loyal readers and the world of scholarship. For more information on the lineup of activities in relation to UNITAS's centenary, you may visit the official Facebook page of UNITAS or the website at unitasust.net. The UNITAS archives may be accessed through the journal's website and at the Miguel de Benavides Digital Library through the link to be posted at the comment section. As we usher in UNITA's centennial anniversary as an academic publication, may I invite you to watch this video.
Since 1922, UNITAS, an open access journal, is the oldest extant multidisciplinary journal in the Philippines. In 1922, the University of Santo Tomas main building was constructed, considered as one of the historical symbols in UST that also represented the height of civilizational achievement in the Philippines. The main building was not born by itself in the year 1922. The academic journal UNITAS was founded in the same year. Through the years, UNITAS has been witness to the nation's history, same as its twin, the main building which would be known as the heart of the university. During the so-called peacetime of the interwar years, UNITAS has the courage to speak about the urgent issues of the day, as well as from the state of the art in fine scholarly theorizing in the arts and published scholarly articles included on the incubation period of the infection typhoid, a series of articles on the indigenous church, problems of working class legislation in the Philippines, the socialistic dream, the fine arts and aesthetic pleasure, the Philippines woman and her influence in the future. During the early American period, the same year when UNITAS broke into academic publication scene, three other journals came into limelight. The Philippine Journal of Science, established in 1906 by the American government, had its interest in scientific research only. The Philippine Agriculturalist and Forester, established in 1911 by UP Los Baños, was founded by the student body of the College of Agriculture and Forestry. The University of the Philippines and its Los Baños branch was similar to college student publication until it developed as an academic journal publication for Philippine agricultural scientists. The Philippine Law Journal, established in 1914 by UP College of Law, was founded by the student-run Law Review affiliated in UP Diliman. The publication was designed as a vital training tool for law students and modeled after the student-edited law reviews of American Law School. In the late 1940s, shortly after World War II, While UST served as an internment camp, UNITAS continued in the publication of research and journals, not only about the relevant disciplines, but also on Filipino society, the nation, and in the world. Various multidisciplinary publications were held in UNITAS. Some of its examples are in the fields of economics, architecture, and international research series from Indonesia, the Middle East, and India. Today, UNITAS has expanded its arena to scholarly international conferences and publications, not just through traditional publication, but also shifted to open access online journals. UNITAS will celebrate its centenary in 2022. Looking into the rich history of the journal itself has been made possible by the UST Heritage Library collections, which has painstakingly scanned all copies of UNITAS starting from its very first issue published in July 1922. This was done for the preservation and digitalization of the journals and for the convenient perusal of specialists, scholars, and general readers. As the oldest university-based multidisciplinary journal of its kind in the Philippines and possibly in Asia, UNITAS is a rich source of information and insights in understanding various aspects of the history of knowledge production in the Philippines across the disciplines. UNITAS is an international online peer-reviewed open access journal of advanced research in literature, culture, and society, published biannually, May and November, by the University of Santo Tomas.
This afternoon's lecture is titled Approaching Non-Human Narratives. The abstract reads, non-human narrative refers to the representation of events with participants of non-human entities. It largely includes four categories: narrative about natural things such as animals, plants, hills, rocks, water, salt, etc. Narrative about supernatural things such as gods, goblins, demons, aliens, monsters, etc. Narrative about artificial objects such as cloth, coins, chairs, ink, toys, etc. And narrative about artificial humans such as robots, colons, machines, etc. The non-human entities take on the roles of narrator, character, and focalizer in a narrative text, and thus have three functions, namely narration, action, and observation. An exploration of non-human narrative not only enriches and expands the existing narrative theory, but also make it more comprehensive and go beyond anthropocentrism. In the context of non-human turn, we gear our attention to non-human narrative in the aim of reconsidering human-non-human relations and engaging a larger organic sphere. This afternoon's lecture will be delivered by Professor Biwu Shang from Shanghai Jiao Tong University, China. He is a professor of English and an editor-in-chief of the De Gruyter journal Frontiers of Narrative Studies. His research interests include contemporary British fiction, narratology, and ethical literary criticism. He is the author of In Pursuit of Narrative Dynamics with Peter Lang in 2011, Contemporary Western Narratology, Post-Classical Perspectives, published in People's Literature Press in 2013, and A Natural Narrative Across Borders, Transnational and Comparative Perspectives, published by Routledge in 2019. His works has appeared in the following journals: Comparative Literature Studies Critique, Studies in Contemporary Fiction, Partial Answers, Neo Helicon, Journal of Literary Semantics, Semiotica, Comparative Literature and Culture, Interdisciplinary Studies of Literature and Arcadia, among others. Our respondent is Professor Youngmin Kim from Dongguk University, South Korea. He is a distinguished research professor emeritus and director of Digital Humanities Lab at Dongguk University, Seoul, Korea, and a Jack Ma Chair Professor of Mayun Education Fund at Hangzhou Normal University in China. He has served as editor-in-chief and currently president of English Language and Literature Association of Korea. He was visiting professor at Cornell University and vice president of the International Association of Ethical Literary Criticism, an executive council member of International Comparative Literature Association, and currently the principal investigator of the research grant from the Korea Research Foundation on the convergence of transmedia, digital humanities, and world literature. His current interest is modern and contemporary poetries in English, comparative and world literature, translation studies, digital humanities, and technology in the humanities. To give his talk, let us all welcome Professor Biwu Shang.
Dear colleagues and friends, good afternoon. I want to thank Professor Maria Luisa Torres Reyes for her kind invitation and for Kimberly Nico Panis for all the technical support. I still remember my last visit to your university in 2019. Let us hope that the pandemic will be over soon and we can meet again. It is great to know that the journal Unitas will turn 100 years older next year. It's such an incredible achievement, and congratulations to you all. The topic of my talk today is Towards a Theory of Non-Human Narratives. The last decade of the 21st century witnessed a prominent non-human turn in social sciences and humanities. The young Rolf and Hannah Stark have keenly observed in their introduction to Duluth and the non-human. At this present moment in intellectual history, it is impossible to consider the human without contextualizing it with the non-human. So what is the non-human term? How is it different from the post-human term? Rolf and Stark fail to address these two questions. The post-human is an issue explored in the broader context of artificial intelligence, which in Catherine Hale's view largely refers to the union of the human with the intelligent machine. Hales argues that in the post-human, there are no essential differences or absolute demarcations between bodily existence and the computer simulation, cybernetic mechanism and a biological organism, robot technology, and human goals. Unlike the post-human term, the non-human term designates to those approaches that are engaged in decentering the human in favor of a turn toward and a concern for the non-human, understood variously in terms of animals, affectivity, bodies, organic and geophysical systems, materiality, or technologies. I agree with Richard Gruson, who argues that the human has always co-evolved, coexisted, or collaborated with the non-human, and the human is characterized precisely by this indistinction from the non-human. The upsurge and the popularity of the non-human term, according to Sana Caracello, is largely caused by the need to find new ways of encountering, discussing, and thinking of entities and environments where human and non-human intermingle in increasingly intricate patterns, which has never been more urgent. Narrative studies, in particular, in Sana Caracello's view, should develop new methods of taking into account not only the traditional trinity of text, the author, the reader, but all the relevant agents and factors contributing to a given text, whether they are beings, species, or historical, natural, textual, cognitive, or social processes. Regrettably, narratology fails to pay sufficient attention to the non-human agents and factors contributing to texts, which makes current narrative studies more or less anthropocentric. For instance, in Monica Flutnik's conceptual framework of natural narratology, a human experiencer is considered a central agent, while non-human agents are largely ignored. About this, Flutnik eloquently contains that, in my model, there can therefore be narratives without plot, but there cannot be any narratives without a human experiencer of some sort at some narrative level. A brief look at the current narrative theory reveals a noticeable feature of an anthropocentric bias in both the definitions and theoretical models of narrative. In the physical world, narrative is written by human beings, in which sense men are storytelling animals, while in the literary world, nonetheless, narratives do not necessarily represent human experience, in which sense narrative can also be concerned with non-humans. That said, it would be a misconception if one equaled stories told by humans with the stories about humans. Donna Haraway claims that it matters which stories tell stories, which concepts think concepts, mathematically, visually, and narratively. It matters which figures, which systemize systems. In Haraway's view, it will make a big difference to both stories and storytelling if the stories about human figures, while neglecting those about non-human figures, which leads to its incompleteness. To make up such a lacuna, a theory of non-human narrative needs to address three broad questions. What is non-human narrative? What are the forms and categories of non-human narrative? And what are the major functions and the significance of non-human narrative? In an introduction to the structural analysis of narrative, Roland Barthes observes that the narratives of the world are numberless. Narrative is first and foremost a prodigious variety of genres, themselves distributed amongst different substances, as though any material were fit to receive man's stories, able to be carried by articulated language, spoken or written, fixed or moving images, gestures, the ordered mixture of all these substances. Narrative is present in myth, legend, fable, tale, novella, epic, history, tragedy, drama, comedy, mime, painting. Think of Caracello's Saint Ursula, stained glass windows, cinema, comics, news item, conversation. Moreover, under this almost infinite diversity of forms, narrative is present in every age, in every place, in every society. It begins with the very history of mankind, and there nowhere nor has been a people without narrative. All classes, all human groups have their narratives, enjoyment of which is very often shared by men with different, even opposing cultural backgrounds, caring nothing for the division between good and bad literature. Narrative is international, trans-historical, trans-cultural. It is simply there, like life itself. In the quoted passage above, Barthes employs such words as man, mankind, human to describe the ubiquity of narrative. In his view, humans always have their coexistence with narratives. In this vein, narratives written by humans are considered equal with narratives about humans, the misconception of which has been shared by many other narratologists. For instance, Gerard Prince, Monica Flutnik, and James Phelan. Let us, for the time being, take Monica Flutnik's Towards a Natural Narratology as an example. In Towards a Natural Narratology, Monica Flutnik refers to William Labov and equals natural narratives with oral ones. She points out that oral narratives, more precisely narratives of spontaneous conversational storytelling, cognitively correlate with perceptual parameters of human experience, and these parameters remain in force even in more sophisticated written narratives, as though the textual makeup of these stories changes drastically over time. Fludnik emphasized that narrative is a matter of human experience, which contributes to the narrativity of a work. Experientiality, in Fludnik's view, reflects a cognitive schema of embodiments that relates to human existence and human concerns. In other words, Fludnik's remarks on experientiality highlight human existence and human concerns. She regrets that narrative theories have long hidden the anthropomorphic bias in narrative concepts. She even argues that the anthropomorphic bias of narratives and its correlation with the fundamental story parameters of personhood. Theoreticians of narrative and have been recognized as constituting the rock bottom level of story matter. So we can find all these other narratologists who have followed the suit of Monica Fludnik to place much emphasis on the narratives about humans. Let us take another example. In narrative as rhetoric, technique, audiences, ethics, ideology, James Phelan defines narratives as telling of a story by someone to someone on some occasion for some purpose. We can easily think of Jim Phelan's model of MITS, namely mimetic, thematic, and synthetic. Phelan claims that readers' responses to the mimetic component involve their interest in characters as possible people and in the narrative world like our own. To put it differently, Phelan regards both the narrator and narratee as somebody, assuming that narrative works are stories about humans rather than that of the non-humans. A second thought would make anyone aware of the possibility that humans not only tell their own stories, but also tell the stories about the non-humans. From ancient Greek myths to contemporary avant-garde experimental works, world literature abounds with non-human narratives. For instance, stories about the gods in Greek and Roman mythology, Chinese supernatural fictions, including Song Ningpu's Strange Tales from the Liao Jie Studio, and the other works such as The Journey to the West, and also we can think of the science fictions about machines and robots, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Ian McEwan's Machines Like Me, animal writings like Jack London's The Call of the Wild, and Julia Barnes's A History of the World in 10.5 chapters, the Chinese Nobel laureate Mo Yan's novel Life and Death Are Wearing Me Out, allegories and fairy tales involving animals, such as Andersen's The Little Mermaid, The Daughter of the Sea, and we also can think of those metamorphosis works, like Franz Kafka's The Metamorphoses, Ian McEwan's The Cockroach, Philip Roth's The Beast, and many other works. In all these works listed above, though the entities are somehow personified, their non-human identities remain unchanged. Regrettably, current narrative theory is mainly devoted to narrative works embodying human experientiality, failing to deal with those works representing non-human experience. So in my talk today, I try to propose a minimum definition of non-human narrative as the organization of events participated by non-human entities into a text. Specifically, non-human entities mainly exist on both the levels of the story and the level of discourse. Non-human characters on the story level, while the non-human narrators on the discourse level. With reference to the identity of non-human characters and non-human narrators, we can categorize non-human narratives into 4 basic types. Narratives of the natural things, such as animals, plants, stones, and water. Second, narrative of supernatural things, such as ghosts and monsters in myths, legends, and epic. Third, narrative of artificial objects, such as coins, toys, clothes, and threads. And fourth, narrative of artificial humans, such as robots, machines, and clones in science fiction. In non-human narrative, the human entities, animate or inanimate, are no longer a part of the setting. Instead, they are either participants of the story or the tellers of the story. To begin with, they are narratives of natural things. Upon their very existence in the world, humans are first of all exposed to natural things. For instance, even in the Bible, Adam and Eve are placed in the Garden of Eden, where they tested the sweet fruits and named the animals and plants they saw, whether they are beasts of the earth, birds of the air, or trees and flowers of the garden. We used to regard the animals and the plants as a part of the setting, neglecting their potentials of being narrative subjects, to which a variety of literary works testify. For instance, in Shang, or the Book of Mountains and the Seas, mountains, seas, plants, and animals tend to be narrative subjects. Because in a traditional way of telling a story, usually the narrators or the stories might follow the chronological order or the spatial order. While in the Book of Mountains and Seas, we can hardly find those stories about the time or about the people. Instead, the book is mainly focused on telling about the places. For example, we can find all these subsections as the classic of the southern mountains, the classic of the western mountains, the classic of the northern mountains, the classic of the eastern mountains, the classic of the central mountains, the classic of eastern mountains, so on and so forth. We can also find a huge number of narratives about natural things in world literature. For instance, in Annie Carey's autobiographies of a lump of coal, a grain of salt, a drop of water, a bit of old iron, a piece of flint. In this book, coal, salt, water, old iron, and flint take turns to recount their own stories and as narrators. And also, we can find Hans Christian Andersen, who is rather qualified and rather good at telling all the stories about natural things. For example, in 5 Ps from a Pod, 5 Ps in the pod become talking individuals and experience different lives. Among them, the last piece browse under a garret window, bring hope for life to a single girl living in the garret. Apart from such natural things as water, salt, plant, animals also play an important role in non-human narratives too. For instance, we can easily think of Julian Barnes's novel, A History of the World, in 10.5 chapters. The woodworm narrator claims that the animals have a compendium of sentimental myths. In fact, writers are always interested in writing animal stories. Apart from the book we have mentioned, like A History of the World in 10.5 chapters, we can also think of such novels like Chen Yinsong's The Last Dance of a Leopard. In this work, the narrator is the last leopard in Shenlongjia area in Hubei province, China. The leopard narrator tells the story of how the entire leopard family is killed by the hunter and Lao Guan and his sons. And the leopard chooses a hard way, taking revenge against the humans, launch a sharp critique of human intervention and the dominance of the wild world. In addition, there are also many works about human-animal metamorphosis. For instance, in Mo Yan's Life and Death and Weary Me Out, the landlord Xi Menlao undergoes metamorphosis as a donkey, an ox, a pig, a dog, and a monkey in sequential reincarnations. Not to mention, we can think of Franz Kafka's metamorphosis. Second, there are narratives of supernatural things. In parallel to narratives of natural things, narratives of supernatural things are those about supernatural ones, like ghosts and monsters. In Homer Epicus, for example, we can find gods and goddesses ranging from Zeus, Muses, Apollo, and Athena. Especially, we can think of Book 20 of the Iliad, which tells the story of those deities who come to the assistance of either of the factions. We can find a couple of lines on the slide. Down the immortals launched to the field of action. Their warring spirits split the gods two ways. Hera went to the master ships with Pallas Athena. Poseidon, who grieves with the earth, and Hermes, god of the luck, who excels them, all at subtle twists and tactics. And the god of fire flanked them, seizing power, so on and so forth. As we know, in the first book of Homer's Epicus, in Iliad, as a matter of fact, the war is not really fought between the humans, and the humans, to a larger degree, are only the agents of those gods. So in this book, we can find the gods are no longer happy with the performance of the humans who are fighting against each other. They decide to take action all by themselves, to join those humans on the earth and to fight against each other. Third, there are also narratives of artificial objects. In many non-human narratives, objects are endowed with life and become acting characters or speaking narrators. There are a plethora of narrative works of artificial objects in 18th century English literature, which are generally known as it narrative, novels of circulation, or object tales. In these works, lifeless objects such as coins, vases, pin cushions, cork drills, and quill pens are animated, acting as characters or narrators, telling their stories. Such narratives about artificial objects are also pervasive in Franz Kafka's works. For instance, The Careers of a Family Man centers on a spore named Aldrich. In this work, the narrator describes Aldrich as such. At the first glance, it looks like a flat, star-shaped spool for thread, and indeed, it does not seem to have a thread wound upon it. To be sure, they're only old, broken-off bits of thread, knotted and tangled together, of the most varied sorts and colors. Aldrich, however, seems to have taken on a life of its own and makes appearances in garret, the stairway, the lobbies, and the entrance hall. When he laughs, there is a rustle of falling leaves. What strikes narrator Peter is that this animate object will outlive him. We can quote from Kafka. There are such a few lines. He does no harm to anyone than one can see, but the idea that he is likely to survive me, I find almost painful. Many of Andersen's stories also fall into this category. We can also think of such tales as the money pig and the bottleneck, and also we can think of the very funny one like the rags. In this story, the rags, a Norwegian rag and Danish rag, quarrel over where they are from. We can read a few lines on the slide. I am a Norse, said the Norwegian, and when I've said I'm Norse, I guess I've said enough. I'm a firm of fiber, like the ancient granite rocks of old Norway. The land up there has a constitution, like a free United States. It makes my fibers tingle to think that what I am and to sound out my thoughts in words of granite. But we have literature, said the Danish rag. Do you understand what that is? This story is very interesting. The conversation between the Norwegian rag and the Danish rag makes me think of the two cultural talk given by C.P. Snow half a century ago. In the end, both rags have been turned into paper. A Norwegian writes a love letter to his Danish girlfriend with a sheet of the paper made from the Norwegian rag, while a Danish poem singing praise for Norway's beauty and power is written on a sheet made from the Danish rag. Similar stories abound in Addison's other writings. For example, the shirt collar, the old street lamp, and even the hardy tin soldier. Fourth, there are narratives of artificial humans. Artificial humans, including robots, machines, golems, and clones, no matter how human-like they are non-humans by nature. In particular, they act and think differently from humans, not to mention they usually experience different fates, which is a part of the reason why there has been a heated discussion of the relationship between humans and artificial humans recently. With regard to this type of non-human narrative, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein can be seen as one of the early experiments. For as we know, in the novel, Victor Frankenstein manages to solve the mystery of life and produces a monster-like artificial human. About the current readings of this novel, Peter Heidel keenly observes that, on the one hand, professional readers will read it, and they do not regard this activity as a restful or slightly shameful outing into the realm of popular culture, but as a legitimate act of scholar. On the other hand, it has reliable sales in the market of horror novels. It might help us to think of new readings of novel if we consider it as a story about non-human beings' engagement with the humans, which will be especially important in the AI age. Similar stories featuring Frankenstein artificial humans can be found in many contemporary literary works. For example, Kazuo Ishiguro's novel Never Let Me Go tells the story of a group of clones. In this work, the young narrator Kathy is both a clone and caretaker of other clones. She remembers how clones are created by humans for the sake of transplanting the ill-functioning organs. With 3 to 4 organ donations, the clones will complete their missions and come to the end of their lives. Although Kathy falls in love with another clone, Tommy, she changes her position to an organ donator from caretaker after witnessing Tommy's last donation, because she could not get permission of deferral from humans. Ian McEwan's novel, Machines Like Me, tells the story of how artificial human intervenes in human life and finally ends in its death. The novel is set in the 1980s, when the first edition of artificial humans were put in the market. Especially interesting is that 12 of these first editions were named Adam, 13 were called Eve. In this novel, Adam shows his exceptional learning ability and earns money online. He also has an affair with the female protagonist, Miranda, declaring that he falls hopelessly in love with her and keeps writing love poems for her. In Kazuo Ishiguro's latest novel, Clara and the Sun, the narrator Clara is an artificial robot. Designed and requested by the AI engineer Capaldi, Clara imitates and learns from her master Juicy so that she can replace Juicy after she dies from a fatal disease. However, based on her own judgment, Clara tries to do what is best for Juicy. With her beliefs and actions, she helps Juicy to recover from her disease and grow into a healthy girl. Non-human entities exist mainly at the levels of story and discourse, playing such roles of narrator, character, and focalizer respectively. They perform three narrative functions, namely telling function, acting function, and observing function. So first, there is the narrative function. That is, the non-human entities play the role of narrators. They can either tell the story of humans or non-humans, or tell the stories of non-humans engaged with the humans. For example, we can think of in Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, Never Let Me Go, the clone narrator Kathy recounts how a group of clones come to the end of their lives by donating their organs to humans. In Julia Banks's A History of the World, in 10.5 chapters, a woodworm narrator tells the story of how animals confront the flood. Second, the acting function. That is, the non-human entities play the roles of actors. Since Aristotle, one of the most important functions of the characters has been actors. For example, A.J. Gramers refers to characters as actors and examines the 6 types of actors, namely subject, object, sender, receiver, helper, and opponent. The actors in narrative works can be both human and non-human. Informed by Gramers, Bruno Latour proposes the very famous actor network theory. Latour puts it frankly that actor network theory borrows the technical term actants from the study of literature. In Latour's conceptual system, the actors can be both human and non-human. It is in this sense he emphasizes that an important means of testing actor network theory is that the non-human participants must be actors, cannot merely play the role of carrying the symbolic projection. In non-human narrative works, non-human entities play the role of actors and protagonists. For example, in Youngmin's novel, Machines Like Me, the robot Adam actively intervenes in the human world. He not only has had sexual intercourse with Miranda, but also leads to her imprisonment by insisting that the truth is everything. Third, the observing function. The non-human entities play the roles of focalizers. For instance, in Julia Banks's The History of the World in 10.5 chapters, the focalizer is a woodworm who not only recounts its thoughts about the destiny of other animals, but also passes its judgment to Noah. To a large extent, postcentrism. In Herman's words, one basic aim for non-human narrative studies is to explore how narratives can serve as a workplace for reconsidering, for critiquing, and reaffirming or dismantling or reconstructing ways of understanding humans' place in a more than human world. In this sense, an exploration of non-human narratives propels us to think such questions as how we could become better humans, as well as how we can contribute to a better world. Especially interesting is the last one, I mean the observing function played by all these non-human narrators, because by observing the kind of human world or about their engagement with the human world, those non-human focalizers, they pass on their own judgments, especially those judgments relating to ethical evaluation. So they will constantly remind us whether it is proper or improper for humans to do such a kind of thing. Let me give you a quick example of the novel written by Kazuo Ishiguro, Clara and the Sun. It's very interesting that when all these humans, including the little girl's mother, I mean Juice's mother and her dad, including the artificial intelligence engineer, all of them have already given up the hope of saving the girl from the fatal disease. While this robot, Clara, she keeps an eye on this girl, and she decides it will be more important for her to save the girl instead of just replacing her. And thus, she has given the humans a lesson by showing us what is a good way to be a human, even though she is a non-human. I will very briefly conclude what I have been presenting here. In her reading of James Coates' The Lives of Animals, Barbara Smuts, an anthropologist, recounts her unique experience of doing field work in Africa. Smuts was observing a group of female and baby baboons when her eyes suddenly met a female baboon named Pandora. Sensing Smuts' friendliness, the female walked right up to her, stood up, put her nose to Smuts' nose, and held Smuts for a few seconds with her long arms. After releasing Smuts, Pandora glanced at her again and went back to feeding. After returning to America, Smuts found the experience unforgettable, saying, "After returning from Africa, I was lonely for non-human company. This yearning was greatly eased by my dog, Safi, who, like the baboons, has given me the opportunity to experience a joyful intersubjectivity that transcends species boundaries." Smuts' experience engages with the important issue of transspecies empathy in non-human narratives. Coates protests the injustice suffered by animals through the fictional female writer Elizabeth Costello. In the old days, the voice of men raised in reason was confronted by the roar of the lion, the bellow of the bull. Man went to war with horn and ball, and after many generations won that war definitely, says Costello. Today, these creatures have no more power. Animals have only their silence left with which to confront us. Generation after generation, heroically, our species refused to speak to us. Both Smuts, the anthropologist of the real world, and Costello, the novelist of the fictional world, try to call our attention to non-human species, including animals. We can take a step further to extend Smuts and Costello's experience and argument to other non-human existence to embrace a larger ecological sphere. Humans are storytelling creatures, yet humans not only tell their own stories by recording and sharing their own experiences, but also the stories of non-human species. An exploration of non-human narratives not only helps us to advance the existing narratology at the theoretical level. As many of you might have known, I am a narratologist, but also provides materials and serves as a workplace for us to reconsider the human-non-human relationships. That's the end of my talk. Thank you once again, and I will be more than happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Professor Biwu Shang. We have learned the classification, function, and method of examining the non-human entities in the formation of human-non-human relations in the literary text and in literary studies in general. May I now call on Professor Youngmin Kim to impart his thoughts and insights.
I, I'm very honored and very pleased to be the respondent to Professor Shang Biwu, who is my old friend. And I realized that the scope of this talk is very broad, at the same time very specific. I think I'm thinking of the meaning of universe, first of all. The universe is so broad, so vast, like the microcosmos and macrocosmos. I remember when I started my English studies in the US, I just was very interested in learning a lot about the Ralph Waldo Emerson's idea of the universe in terms of the macrocosmos and the microcosmos. And then in this context, Professor Shang Biu's talking about narratology of non-human beings as well as human beings is very much a hot topic nowadays since we are confronting the new age of the machine age, which is called the transhumanism and posthumanism. We are encountering many different levels of turns. And then sometimes in literary terms like the twists and turns, but we are thinking of the multiple way of turns, maybe starting from when the linguistic turns comes first. After linguistic turns, and we have maybe cultural turns and post-colonial turns and post-structuralist turn and also postmodern turn and post-human turns and the transhuman turn. But actually, the Professor Shang Biu's turn is very intriguing, very good, very ingenious in the sense that this new term, the chapter term, is based upon the narratology. Narratology is based upon the idea of the literature. So without literature, written discourse, of oral and written discourse, maybe we are not able to catch up with all the change of the languages and then transformation of different sense of language at all. But I mean, it's very related to narratology. But I'm learning a lot from Professor Shang Biu's discourse. I mean, I'm following up to all his ideas and things like. But his classification, first of all, is very natural. At the same time, very succinct and also the comprehensive, starting from the first of all the substance, which includes the natural things and the supernatural things and artificial object and artificial humans. It comprehends everything. I'm sorry to phone is ringing. Don't worry about that. So the flora and fauna, animals and plants and all the things in the nature, it's still we are confronting because we are confronting the kind of the ecological crisis. we have to go back to the origin of the ecological process in terms of nature, which is based upon the natural things, animals and plants and many different stones, even stones and even the sea and mountains, and then also the earth. Everywhere in the world is composed of these kind of natural things, and they have their own things. They express something, but we never understand what they are expressing because we ignore them, or maybe we think of them as just kind of a thing, just thing. But thing is very important nowadays because we encounter the reality as a thing. The thing becomes very profound and indescribable because of a lot of the thing theories are concerned of the thing too. For the supernatural, we have been talking about spirit for a long period of time at the beginning and then until now. Still, we don't know exact nature of spiritual essence of human beings. Maybe Eastern, Western world is different in their conceptualization of spirit, and Buddhism, and then Islamic, and the Christianity, many different supernatural things, and even the goblin, hobgoblin, also maybe in Korea we have very famous movie like Dokkaebi, which is about the afterlife, after you dead, and what will happen, something like that. So it's a lot of different levels and the understanding of the supernatural things. And they say something to us. When you dream, something in our dream will talk to us. So this kind of the supernatural things. And the artificial object, I mean, we create something out of the natural object. So maybe that's out through the technology, or maybe through the kind of the devices. And the last one is Professor Shang was mentioning the artificial humans, which is related to AI, robot, and maybe neuroscience things. So this comprehends the universe of the Earth, maybe beyond, maybe planetary things as well. So the Professor Chang Biu's scope and classification is about the universe. In Korea nowadays, the hot keyword is metaverse. Meta is originally it's metadata or some kind of the meta, but nowadays we call it the trends. It's very closely related to trends. The transverse instead of using the trans term because trans is so popular nowadays until maybe during the last decade. The transmedia, it starts from translation, but transnationalism, transhistoricism, and the transculturalism, many different kind of trends. So we are so used to it. So instead of trans, maybe metaverse. Now it's the keyword now in Korea nowadays is cultural studies. So I think that all this level of classification of human universe, including non-human universe, it provokes me to think about something else. I mean, which is related to the concept of the other, the other. So what is the other? Post-structuralists and postmodernists are talking about the concept of the other for a long period of time. Still, we don't know exactly. And sometimes a friendly other, or animals maybe the opposing others. So still, we are grappling with the concept of the other. We are nowhere as yet. But I'm actually, Professor Chang is trying to grapple with this concept, the other, in his own way, very unique, idiosyncratic, and I admire your effort and dedication to this new project to a new ontology of the universe. I would say the new ontology of universe. So I think since he elaborate all this classification, what is interesting is kind of his way of the linking all this kind of political or different kind of the substance. It's the rhetoric. It's very through the language and literary discourse, and there's some kind of ethical dimension. I think I realized starting from Professor Chang Biu's understanding of all this universe in his own way is two keywords. People, I mean, during the pandemic, we are suffering a lot from multi-level of a crisis, economic, and also earth and climate change, many different levels. Maybe, well, maybe you may know the Bernard Stiegler is categorizing 7 different kind of crises in the Anthropocene. So maybe I won't elaborate all this detail, but so actually we are confronting crisis, but that's all things comes from what Professor Shang Biwu pointed out as anthropo anthropomorphic bias. I think that is the starting point. Anthropomorphic bias. So reaching toward what is solution, and then Professor Shang Biu is the prescribing, and then the presenting us the idea of trans-species empathy. I think that's a very good kind of the notion for us to learn, to develop a threshold, the linking thread between these two entities, two different levels of dimension of entity. Maybe if you reach that toward the trans-species empathy, we need something more methodological and technological kind of the kind of devices. I think this is coming from maybe 3D, 4D, VR, XR, EXR, many different levels of the virtual real things are happening now. But not only that, the virtual real, but real world is more important than virtual real world. I think that's the narratology. I think I would presume that I never thought about the linking to different levels of dimensions of entities. I think the narratology, because human beings can speak languages. Without language, we cannot communicate. Even though we have Zoom, we have TikTok, we have Tencent, and many different levels of the online devices. But who use this? Only human beings. But I mean, through the human beings, we just talk to the machine, or talk to the screen, so that we can communicate. But one thing is missing. I think that the Professor Chang Biu is elaborated the missing part in terms of the natural thing, supernatural, artificial object, artificial humans. Who is controlling all these kind of the devices? I think the maybe machines. Everything is machine, machining. Even though we are perfect in controlling machines, but actually something else will happen, like some mistakes and some errors and intervention, many bomb zooming, something like that. So maybe there's something else. Artificial humans are there, and then also artificial objects are there, and maybe supernatural things are up there or down there and inside, in between. Also, maybe natural things. Even though while we are talking, sometimes we are thirsty, we need some water. So water is everything. Everywhere, without water, we can't survive during the pandemic. The most important thing is water. So people during the pandemic, the most people want most is water, first of all. In the desert, you can survive. But I mean, without water, you cannot survive. No food, okay. But I mean, without no water. So I think in this sense, this significance and relevance of this narratology talk, we have to learn from these 4 levels of the object, of substance, so that we can enhance more. I think the one thing striking from Professor Shang Biu's discourse, I think there's something more we can talk about. But I'm quite agree with him, and then empathizing all his talk and his content and his long time period of meditation, and then thinking over of all the subject, human subject or the non-human subject. But there is something more we can do, but we have to go deeper into the analysis of each text itself, literal text, which is related to non-human the narrative. Actually, he did a very good job in the specifying all the detail of the examples of this non-human narrative. Without going into further, you may listen to the kind of video again, or maybe text itself. I read his text already, so that's why I'm elaborating this better than you are, because I read it in advance, so that I know what to do, what to say. So that means that the rhetoric is already embedded inside me, in my mind. Without the linguistic representation of Professor Chang views mind through the language and the rhetoric, and I don't know what to say. But maybe I can talk about my own things instead of the responding to his. I have my own text, but originally I prepared my text. But when I listened to his talk, and I read his talk first, when I read it, I can respond in a very nice way, a very organic. But when I listen to his talk, it's different. So oral language is quite different from the written language. Between the two languages, the human being is called a medium. Without medium, there's no message. So we is the interpreter, respondent to Professor Shang view. Without me, somebody else will represent his idea in a different way. So medium is message, technical medium is message, but also my understanding is not quite his understanding. But I mean, we are different. But after this presentation, maybe my reply will be compensated by maybe our mutual dialogue. I think that's essential for us to understand the nature of neurology. I think that's my understanding of neurology. The human narrative is very important. I think the non-human narratology is very important because that has been regarded as the other previously. What is the nature of the other? I studied the concept of other from the Jacques Lacan's psychoanalytic other. I learned a lot from him, but I mean, it's a long time ago. Now I'm turning towards something else because we need some practical side of the discourse. There are four discourses according to Jacques Lacan, but I mean, four discourses will winding up, it's one discourse. I think the narratology is catching up with all this kind of different kind of discourse into one. But it's not kind of the unified one, fragmentary, but at the same time, representing four different natural things, supernatural things, and artificial objects, and artificial humans. I like this kind of classification, and that will be the beginning of the new development on narratology. Maybe I can say more, but I'll stop here, and then I have maybe one last question instead of the going further. But the basic question: how do you define? You already defined it, but I mean in a different way. How do you define the otherness, the other, rather than yourself, your body, mind, spirit, your bone and blood, and every material part and spiritual part, mental part? AI doesn't have the spiritual part yet. AI, artificial intelligence, artificial humans should have a spiritual part, but it's not quite sufficient yet, not quite ready yet. But in the near future, like 50 years, within 50 years, maybe something will be embedded in the artificial spirituality. I don't know, but I mean, what do you think about the otherness of the this spirituality or some of the bodily representation? I think I like the Catherine Hale's concept of the difference between bodily existence and computer simulation, also the cybernetic mechanism and biological organism, and robot teleology and human goals. But what I'm concerned is very much with the difference between mechanism and organism. Our body is organism, but still we have a mechanism. But our mechanism is sophisticated. All the AI cannot imitate our mechanism, organism. So I would like to ask Professor Shang about two different words, the concept of your understanding the otherness. Now, after having written this, talked about this, your concept of otherness, and also difference between mechanism and organism as one person or one entity. So I think this is my question, also provocation. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Youngmin Kim, for your very nice comment and insightful examination and suggestions on how I can go deeper in this direction. In particular, I appreciate your comments that in general, the talk can be related to our view and our thoughts, our reflections on the very universe that we find our existence. So it is in this sense I try to draw our audiences and my colleagues' attention to the very place we survive, we dwelling in, are not really, somehow the only place that belongs to human beings. Instead, we need to realize that we cohabitate this place with our non-human counterparts. But as you have mentioned in your response, we have a huge number of literary works representing the non-human experience. Regrettably, current narrative theorists or even literary critics focus upon those works that represent the human experience, while they largely ignore our non-human counterpart. So it is in this sense I try to draw the critical attention back to this cohabitation. So you are very much right in the sense that when we talk about the non-human narrative, unavoidably there will be the question, first of all, of the other. So in so far as my talk and the topic non-human narrative is concerned, the other or the otherness is rather important. So in general, the non-human could be seen as the capitalized other of humans, but we can subcategorize we shall say the other into several categories. For instance, so like those objects existing in the natural world or those man-made objects, they somehow would help us, the human beings, to redefine our own existence and to re-identify our own identity. In particular, in the second part of my talk, the narrative functions of all these non-human narrative, they will play the particular function like observing function. So those non-human agents or the other would help us to focalize the human world through their own otherness. And this would enable us to see clearly what is happening right now in this world and how we can make our current world a better world and how we human beings can make ourselves a better one. So this is the first question I try to respond. And then the second question is about organism and mechanism. Well, we can generally answer the question again from two directions. At the macro level, the organism somehow is not only relating to human beings as the individual, but also can be related to your concern, like the universe. So the entire universe and this world, the very country or place or state that we are living has its own organism. So how it is going to run, how it can be managed, in particular, in the biosphere world that we are living today, for thousands or millions of years, human beings have coexisted with the non-human parts. And this is the very system that we have adopted. And this is a certain kind of mechanism that would help us, the world, to run and to help us to live in this manner or in this fashion. So we need to realize this very basic point. And this is the very point of our departure, to go further and to think about our own existence and our correlation with our non-human counterparts. And then we can also approach this question at a micro level. So when we talk about, we should say, mechanism, in particular, we can relate it to the artificial, we should say, human beings or artificial products, especially for those robots, for those machines in the AI age. They are somehow run by a certain technological mechanism, while the question is the very limit, how far we can manipulate this technological mechanism and how we are going to make a better use of them. If we go to extreme, it might make us to realize maybe they will bring us some side effects. And this is, once again, the novel I am citing in my talk, Clara and the Sun. In the very beginning, the humans believe technology, science and technology could help us to transform ourselves, to transform our identities. So in the novel, the parents have used the genes technology to uplift their children. So when their elder daughter is dead because of the fatal disease, they do not realize what the technological side effect. They try to make use of that in their younger daughter. When the younger daughter is sick again because of the gene engineering, uh, they do not think of whether they can cure their daughter. Instead, they try to resort to artificial intelligence. They want to use a machine to replace their own daughter. So this is the typical example how far and what kind of extreme that the human beings have gone to pursue the technological mechanism. Instead of realizing how we can make better use of the organism in the human world. So the typical ending of this novel, Clara and the Sun, I mean, referring to it again, in responding to your questions that eventually those robot, this machine, try to use the energy, the nutrition of the sun to cure these human group when all the rest of the humans have already given up the hope. Because to me, the sun is the very origin of all the human energy or human resources. So this is something would remind us whether we are going to go to extreme by pursuing technological management, or are we going to make full use of the natural, organism to help us survive and help us live in the way that we need. So thank you, Professor Kim, for your kind response and for your very nice words about my talk and for your very thought-provoking questions. So, honey, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much for that intelligent and insightful exchange, Professor Yang and Professor Kim. Now I would like to open the floor to our online audience for their comments, remarks, or questions. And again, please key in your questions or insights at the comment section. Uh, okay. Here's the first question from a part-time college humanities lecturer. Okay, person says, thank you for your very instructive and enlightening lecture. The question is, what is or are lost by narrative studies because of its failure to develop new methods that might more fully account for non-human spaces, factors, and or processes?
This is a very interesting and very good question because I think the very basic premise of my talk is that we need to follow the following steps. So first of all, we need to make the current narrative theories realize that we do have a large corpus of narrative texts to examine and to explore. But their current theoretical models or the toolkits they have developed have more or less ignored, if we cannot say they have failed to pay attention to these larger corpus of narrative texts. I think the major reason is that there is a kind of misconception. We always believe all the narratives are written by human beings. Somehow, we just interchange the narratives written by the human beings with those narratives about the human beings. So we need to question whether those narrative texts are about human experientiality or the non-human experientiality. For example, the leading scholar in Germany, Monika Fludnik, who approaches the narrative by solely relying upon the human experientiality. We have a huge number of narrative texts in the arena of world literature, which are not about the human experientiality. Instead, they try to represent the non-human experience. So this is the very step that we need to do. So our intuition does not sound right. We do have a huge number of narrative texts about non-humans. The second issue I try to go, or second step I try to follow, is that let us classify who are those non-human narrative texts, and then we can, in particular, examine their functions. So whether they have the functions shared by those human agents, or they have their own particularities, they have their own functions that are different from the human agents. So very briefly, I try to respond to the question in this way. Thank you. It's a very thought-provoking, excellent question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Whether Professor Kim has something to say?
Yes, Professor Kim.
Yeah, I just followed the Professor Shang's ideas, and then I think I quite agree with what has been said. I'm not a narratologist, but I read a lot of the different texts, particularly poetic texts. So maybe I may add additional question about what about the poetic text, poetry? I mean, I'm talking about the novels, it's understandable, but I mean, a lot of the poetry is now transforming their literary format and the genres, the electronic poetry and different sense. So electronic poetry is based upon the concept of nowadays AI. So maybe you can say more about this poetry section of this narratology. Will it be possible, or just wonder?
Yes, we can definitely find a huge number of texts are not really, we should say, in the particular genre of novel or the drama. We can also find the non-human agency in the existence of we shall say, in the genre of poetry. Let me give you two very quick examples. The first one will be the epic poetry Beowulf. So in that epic poetry, we can find the non-human figure, Grendel, and his mom, both of whom are monsters. And also, we can cite a classic example like Homer. In Homer's Iliad is a typical example. So we can find all these gods. We can find all these goddesses. So to me, in the very first book of Homer, Iliad, even though it's mainly about the Trojan War, anyway, I think the war between the Trojans and the Greeks. Uh, in nature, it's a war between different parties of gods. So while the human fighters are more or less the agents of the god who fight against each other. So this is a typical example. Of course, later on in those romantic poetry in the 19th century, and also in the 21st century, like the environmental poetry or environmental writings, we can find all these animal poetry are like those written by Ted Hughes. So more or less, these non-human agents again take the central protagonists, or they have their own voices. So this is the kind of genre or the kind of tendency I'm thinking of. Professor Kim has a very sharp eye, noticing the genre I failed to take into my consideration in the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. You
Thank
have
you.
talked about already, yeah, but I'm just elaborate. Add, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Kim and Professor Shang. This is another interesting question, but please be patient because this is quite long. I think it came from another scholar from the literature. He says, apart from its potential for the production of a richer, thicker description of the narrative, what do you think is the most important ethical implication of this new attention to otherwise neglected features in the non-human turn of narrative studies? I think this has something to do about its relationship to other school of thoughts in literary criticism.
Okay, maybe this time we invite Professor Kim to answer the question first for changing faces.
I think I'm not supposed to answer the question, but you better answer in a way. Yeah. Uh, I just lost the last part of the question, the ethical implication of the what. Uh, I just wonder. I mean, what was the question exactly?
The question again is, given the fact that the non-human narrative is an avenue for a richer production of knowledge, what is
Mm.
the most important ethical implication of this new attention to otherwise neglected features in the non-human turn of narrative studies?
Mhm. Uh, it's quite a complicated question and answer, but actually, I would presume that if somebody would like to answer the question of the otherness in the non-human agent, particularly the animals and plants and all the stones and even the river and the mountains. But actually, practically speaking, that's beyond us. But at the same time, if you listen to the voices of the water in the mountain, water in the ocean, it's different. I mean, two different kind of the voices from one is from the ocean, one is from the mountain. But if you keep listening, I think that we need some kind of meditation. That is also related to spiritual, supernatural thing. So I think the significance of this kind of listening is opening up ourselves to the new dimension of the human embodiment or human spirituality and human mentality. I think that's what I can say. But a lot of the poetry is focusing on this kind of listening to the nature, listening to the otherness of the beyond ourselves. Because we are so complicated inside, we are actually imprisoned in our body, imprisoned in our language, imprisoned in our spirituality. There are other spirituality, mentality, other mentality, other linguistic representations. So if we are able to open up by way of keep listening attentively, I think the attention is very important. We can't be like the artificial intelligence because we are not prone to this kind of the new way of attention. But if we are practicing all this kind of the new forms of attentional aspect, then we might be different. But I mean, this is kind of the very how the utopian idea, first of all. But it will take time for us to readjust ourselves to this new environment because of this new metaphors, I would say, and so we have to readjust ourselves. Then we need the concept of new way of transformation. I mean, I think I've been thinking about transformation in a different sense, too rapid. But our life is so slow. How can the balance between the slow or 100 years kind of slowness is better than the rapid, progressive kind of technological development? In between, we are suffering a lot. So I think there are a lot of thinking going on, particularly when you're confronting the Anthropocene, people are thinking in a very rapid way, but I think we need to slow down to think about these matters. But we can maybe elaborate a little bit about what contemporary poetry, contemporary fictions are doing this at the same time in the other side. So we need to talk about more. Maybe somebody in the audience might know more than this. So the questioner might answer this question in a very proper way. But I mean, I think at the moment I can answer this way. There's more I mean, to think about. Thank you.
Okay, I will just follow up. So I think this question is very interesting. We can approach it by examining the pros and the cons. So the benefits of doing non-human narrative, especially when we are going to consider the positive consequences or the ethical values or the heuristic values. So first of all, it will help us to go beyond Anthropocene, to help us to reconsider and realize the human non-human correlation instead of regarding human as the only existence in the human world. Of course, this is really a false misconception, and we need to correct it. But when we are going to think of the side effects of doing non-human narrative studies, especially, for example, like the animal study, those non-human narratives are still written by the humans. So this is rather paradoxical. So we believe this is exactly what is in the minds of those animals, in the minds of those plants, in the minds of those inanimate objects. The problem is that all these ideas are, to some degree, imagined or created by the human writers or the human creators. So, to what degree our ideas, our projected thoughts really reflect the minds of those animals, of those, we shall say, non-human counterparts who cannot really articulate their own, we shall say, meditations, their own dissatisfactions, or their own anxieties, so on and so forth. So, so the paradoxical nature of non-human narrative would make us realize that, okay, on the one hand, we try to be justified, we try to do justice to our non-human counterparts. We come to identify you, we come to examine you, we try to give you equal rights, to give you equal attention. On the other hand, we need to be cautious and we need to realize whether this is the very attention they want to receive, or this is the very right or the very idea they want to take on, or maybe that if they can really speak, they might feel very furious by saying, no, you have completely misunderstood us animals, so on and so forth. I'm thinking of also the potential paradoxes in association with the wonderful question raised by the questioner. So this is what I am responding at present. Honey?
Thank you so much, Professors Shang and Professor Kim. Last question. Um, for Professor Shang, what do you think is the future? Now, what's your prediction about the future of non-human narrative studies?
I'm thinking about this. When I'm working on the non-human narrative, when I was beginning writing my paper and preparing for the talk today, my initial intention was to draw our colleagues' attention to this direction by saying, okay, we do have a huge number of non-human narratives that are waiting for us to explore, to embark upon. And this would be a very adventurous enterprise. And then when I'm done with the paper, uh, I think we still have a lot of things to do. We still have a lot of things left unsaid and unexplored. For instance, when we are going to examine the human and non-human relationship in with regard to, for example, the human and the machine in the AI age, what about those machine right? When we have those human-like machine, are we really going to conceive them as machine or as our human counterpart? Whether they are going to enjoy the human rights that they should deserve, or we are only going to see them as our assistants or as the toys or as the tools. And also the other direction I'm thinking of is that when we are going to usher in more and more machines or robots, those non-human parts in contemporary society, what if they have done something wrong? And whose, we shall say, responsibility are we going to take? For example, when we have those medical robots who are doing operations in the hospital, what if there is a medical failure? Are we going to say, okay, well, the doctors say, well, it's not my fault, it's the machine's fault. So I'm not guilty at all. Are we are we going to blame all the failure of the operation to the machines, to the robots, or are we going to say it is you, the doctor, who is wrong and who have made this huge mistake, and that would cause such a disastrous failure? Um, I think the other thing I want to emphasize that in the days to come, the non-human narrative will be more and more popular because we have scholars from different fields are now pursuing their scholarship in this direction, largely in the context of the non-human term. If we want to have a better human world, if we want to pursue a better human life, the premise of the thing we need to realize and we need to do is to make our coexistence, our cohabitation with the non-humans. We need to realize it, and also we need to put the correlation in a proper manner and in a proper way. And also we need to correct our mistakes and our errors. So one thing can be sure is that in the following days to come, the non-human narrative will enjoy a very big high tide. But we should just wait and see whether it is true or not. That's what I can predict because the future is not arriving yet. So we shall only wait and see. Thank you, Honey.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the question's context is about the potential of non-human narratives, again, as a strong foundation of area of study because I believe it's something that's very familiar to us yet strange, as mentioned as well by Professor Kim a while ago. Again, thank you very much, Professor Biwu Shang and Professor Youngmin Kim, for sharing your scholarly insights on today's topic. Surely, our co-scholars in the literature field have found another interesting area of study in literature. And indeed, this is a profound area of study as well because, as I mentioned earlier, it is something that we're very exposed with, diba? With a lot of the multiplicity of genres in literature and media. And at the same time, the intersection and the linkages of these are not very well explored yet. Okay. And of course, this is also connected with the concept of other and the otherness to go further and think about our existence and our relation to the non-human entities related as well. No, I deem it's also related to ethical criticism, eco-criticism, and even animal studies. Thank you so much. Before we end the program, please be reminded about answering the post evaluation form that can be accessed through the link posted in the comment section below. The last installment of the International Lecture Series for this year will take place on December 10, Friday, same time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, on Reading a Science Fictions of Community. It will feature two prominent scholars in law and literature and international law. They are attorney Jose Duque Bagolaya of the University of Hong Kong as the main lecturer and attorney Romel Bagares of Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam as the respondent. Also, please follow the official pages of Unitas, Class, and Critica Cultura for more updates. Again, this has been your host, Hani Alerta, wishing you all a great weekend ahead. Thank you so much for attending this lecture.